This is the Raspberry Pi 4 Model B. Let's go through its peripherals. Now let's add heatsink to the board. This is the heatsink with a fan. So now let's add an SSD to our Raspberry Pi. So this is an 512 GB mSATA SSD. So now let's stack up the SSD below the Raspberry Pi using standoffs. Now let's prepare our SD card. We'll go to the raspberrypi.org where under softwares we will have the Raspberry Pi OS. There you will see the Raspberry Pi Imager software. Just click on download and install. Once installed, it will open up like this. We can select the Raspberry Pi OS 32-bit. Select our SD card. So this is the 16 GB SD card and click on write. This will download the Raspberry Pi OS from the internet and write it on your SD card. Once the SD card is prepared, you can remove it from the computer and connect it to the Raspberry Pi. Now let's boot the Raspberry Pi. Once the Raspberry Pi is booted up, it will show you this screen. Welcome to Raspberry Pi. There you can do the initial setup. Click Next to set up your country, language and time zone. This will take some time. On this screen, you will be asked to change the default password. The default user is Pi and the password is Raspberry. So you can change the default password here. To remove the black borders on the screen, select this text box and click Next. Here you will be shown your Wi-Fi SSIDs and you can select your Wi-Fi and put in your password. Once your Wi-Fi is connected, Raspberry Pi will update its software. This will take some time depending upon your internet connection speed. Once the updates are installed, Raspberry Pi will ask you to restart the system. This will make sure all the settings are updated correctly. You can change the desktop background in desktop preferences, and you can select any picture from the available list. To enable Vnc and Ssh, click the Raspberry Pi button. Under the preferences, select Raspberry Pi configuration. Under the interface tab, you will see camera, SSH, Vnc, SPI. You can select SSH, Vnc. If you need any other, you can enable those. Under the performance tab, you can modify the GPU memory. I have modified it to 128. You would need to restart the Pi to get these changes effective. Once restarted, it will give you a warning saying the default password of your Pi for SSH is not changed. You would need to change that password. Here I have logged into my Windows machine. Under command prompt, I put in the command ssh pi @ my IP address of the Pi. Key in your password and here you go.